more than simple cutlery. A cultural journey today, using a fork and a spoon at the table is such a trivial act that we rarely stop to think about their history. These utensils, which we consider basic and indispensable, were not always part of human dining. In fact, their journey to universal acceptance was long and, at times, surprising, filled with resistance, superstition, and cultural shifts. The spoon, though ancient and more readily accepted, and the fork, which for a time was considered satanic or unnecessary, tell a fascinating story of social evolution and how even the simplest objects can reflect complex dynamics of power, etiquette, and religion. This script will unravel the trajectory of these humble yet powerful instruments at the table, from their origins to their central role in contemporary gastronomy. The spoon, a human companion. Since the earliest times, the spoon is undoubtedly the older of the two utensils, with roots that are lost in prehistory. In our natural origins, the earliest spoons were likely shells, pieces of hollowed wood, animal horns, or even large leaves, used to transport liquids or semi-solid foods. Ancient evidence. There are records of rudimentary spoons made of wood and bone dating back to the Paleolithic period. Ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians and Romans, already used spoons made of materials like ivory, bronze, silver, and even gold for ritual and practical purposes. Unquestionable functionality. The acceptance of the spoon was relatively quick and universal due to its innate functionality. For consuming soups, broths, porridges, or other liquid and soft foods, the spoon was the most practical and hygienic solution, surpassing the use of hands or pieces of bread. Symbol of status. Throughout history, more elaborate spoons made of precious metals became symbols of social status and wealth, especially during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. The fork, a controversial and devilish invention. In contrast to the spoon, the history of the fork is marked by a long and, at times, strange cultural resistance. Ancient antecedents. Although the first forks resembling modern ones appeared in the Middle Ages, the idea of a pointed instrument for handling food was not entirely new. There are indications of utensils with 2 or 3 prongs in ancient Rome and the Byzantine Empire, mainly used for serving, not for eating directly, such as carving forks or for removing food from hot pots. Arrival in Western Europe, 11th century. The modern fork with 2 prongs is believed to have arrived in Western Europe around the 11th century, brought from the Byzantine Empire by a Byzantine princess who married the Doge of Venice. The Venetian nobility adopted the fork for eating fruits and sweets, avoiding soiling their hands. The devil's tool. The introduction of the fork was met with strong resistance and disdain, especially from the Catholic Church and the general population. Contrary to divine nature, the fork was seen as a superfluous and even sinful instrument, as it seemed to go against the divine nature of eating with one's hands, as God intended. Considered satanic, its pointed prongs evoked the image of the devil's trident, earning it the nickname Devil's Tool, or satanic utensil. Unnecessary luxury. Furthermore, it was seen as a sign of extravagance and affectation, something unnecessary for simple life. Slow acceptance in Italy, 14th and 16th centuries. Despite the initial resistance, the fork began to be gradually accepted in Italy from the 14th century onwards, especially with the increased consumption of pasta, which was difficult to eat with hands or a spoon. Italian cuisine, with its dishes requiring more dexterity, helped popularize the fork among the upper classes. Slow diffusion throughout the rest of Europe. France, 16th century. Catherine de' Medici is credited with introducing the fork to the French court in the 16th century, but its acceptance was slow and restricted to the nobility. England, 17th century. In the 17th century, the traveler and writer Thomas Coryat was ridiculed for using a fork in England, where it was seen as an Italian oddity. Acceptance only came later, with the rise of the bourgeoisie and the pursuit of greater hygiene and refinement at the table. The four-pronged fork. The two-pronged fork was the initial standard, but in the 17th and 18th centuries, the three-pronged and later four-pronged fork, closer to what we use today, began to become popular, offering greater stability for picking up food. Key factors for universal acceptance. Several factors contributed to the fork and spoon becoming ubiquitous at the table. Hygiene. The growing concern for hygiene, especially after epidemics, made the use of utensils more appealing than eating with hands. Etiquette and refinement. As society became more formal and stratified, table etiquette evolved. The use of cutlery became a sign of social distinction, refinement, and civility, differentiating the upper classes from the lower ones. Evolution of cuisine. The complexity of dishes and the way food was served changed, requiring more efficient tools for handling it. Dishes with sauces, cooked vegetables, and meats cut into smaller pieces were more easily consumed with a fork and knife. Industrialization. The mass production of cutlery during the Industrial Revolution made it more accessible and cheaper, allowing it to reach all levels of society. Social standardization. Over time, the use of a fork and spoon became the social norm, taught from childhood and expected at any formal or informal meal. The essential trio: fork, knife, and spoon. From the 18th and 19th centuries, the set of fork, knife, and spoon became the standard for the Western table. The knife, as an extension of the hand for cutting food, is as old as the spoon, but its use in conjunction with the fork to cut and bring food to the mouth is a more recent practice. The combination of these three utensils offers maximum efficiency and versatility for most dishes, solidifying their position as fundamental elements of the modern meal. From contested objects to inseparable companions. The trajectory of the fork and the spoon is a fascinating reflection of humanity's social and cultural changes. The spoon, utilitarian and naturally accepted, and the fork, initially rejected and even demonized, witnessed the evolution of etiquette, hygiene, and gastronomy itself. What began as a simple need to handle food transformed into a complex system of customs, where these utensils are not just tools, but extensions of our culture and civility. Today, when we pick up a fork and a spoon, we are invited to reflect on their long and curious journey, recognizing that even the simplest objects of our daily lives carry within them a rich history of adaptation, resistance, and acceptance that has shaped how we eat and interact at the table.